Well, speaking during the opening of 2 driving license centers in Gauteng, the Transport Minister, Fikile Mbalula, further said, although the government is caring, there is a country to run and an economy to sustain, and hard decisions have to be made regarding e-tolls. But the Automobile Association says its research is clear that the overwhelming majority of Gauteng motorists will never pay e-tolls under any circumstances. A spokesperson, Layton Beard, joins us now to unpack this further. Layton, good to have you with us tonight here on In Focus. The DG at Transport, Alec Moemi, discussing this particular issue, says the discussions are around various financial options that are available. Let's take it back a little bit. For the transport road infrastructure, it cost 17.9 billion rands. We are told the e-toll infrastructure itself cost another 2.7 billion rand. This according to outer figures. So taking the amount now to 20.6 billion rand. Where is that debt sitting today from 2013?
I mean, if you extrapolate it by taking interest and the amount of people who aren't paid, I'm sure it's going to be close to about 50 billion. I mean, we haven't seen any of those figures, but I mean, I would imagine it's an enormous figure, Talbot. And it's been allowed to grow when, sadly, there are options that are on the table. And these are options that were given way back when, and government was said, consider these as alternatives. One of those was a very clear suggestion to ring-fence an amount within the general fuel levy. Now, on every litre of petrol, we're paying around 30% to the general fuel levy, and it's currently at around 5 rand a litre. Our view, even back when e-tolls were starting, was to take, 10 or 15 cents. The number at that point wasn't really determined, but a figure of the existing general fuel levy, and use that money to fund the e-toll project. And had we had done that, 10 or 15 years ago, we wouldn't be in the predicament we are currently.
Yeah, now the MEC for Transport in Gauteng said in May 27th they are scrapped. Now recently he said even worse. He says they are not even generating the revenue that government requires. Now, if SANRAL's debt is not addressed by Treasury and the e-tolls are cancelled, what would be the impact?
Well, I mean, I'm sure there'd be a financial impact for government and the National Treasury. I think for ordinary motorists in Gauteng, there would really be no major impact. And I think part of what we said on Friday, Tava, was you can't say that road maintenance and road development is an either-or situation. In other words, you can't say if you don't pay your e-tolls, these roads aren't going to be maintained. No, I think in our view that's misleading. What we rather would like to see is that roads are maintained even without the e-toll money being paid, because it's not being paid currently, and those roads do need to be maintained. So we think there are other alternatives that can be found, and one of those that we mentioned was the Gautrain patronage guarantee that's currently being paid to a private concessionaire. There's 2 billion rand right there. It goes to a private company, and it takes 25% of the Gauteng transport budget. I think we have to question why something that caters for a minority is getting such a lot of funding, while most of the people who use that road on a daily basis, the Gauteng freeway, are now having to subsidize it at the same time. So I think there's a lot of concern around those things. Are there alternatives? In our view, yes, there are many.
Yeah. Are they looking at these options? As I was saying, the DG is saying they're looking, the conversation right now is around the various financial options available. You've just mentioned at least 2. Are they looking at them?
Well, I certainly hope they are looking at it, Toby. Unfortunately, we're not privy to those discussions. We met the minister in August 2019, and we said to him, this is the findings of our research. And as you mentioned in your introduction, that research points to a very clear indication from Gauteng motorists that they've taken a principled stand and they're not going to be paying e-tolls. Compliance levels back in 2019 were low. We're 2 years further down the line. I would imagine that they're even lower now than they were back then. And people are not going to pay. Even the threat of legal action is not going to make people pay. So while I'm not privy to those discussions, I certainly hope that the Department of Transport and the South African National Roads Limited are looking at alternatives and saying, well, guys, listen, these are some of the things that we should consider, because e-tolling clearly isn't working.
After there was this indecision between what Treasury was saying, between what the politicians in Gauteng were saying, it said that in 2019 the compliance level dropped down to 20%, which means 20% of those who were paying tolls were subsidizing the 80% who were not paying. My question is, what's keeping those gantries on? What's keeping those e-toll offices open? And who's paying those salaries?
Well, I mean, citizens are paying those salaries through their taxes. So, people are being employed and the gantries are staying up because it's being funded by government. And I think that that's part of the reason why we say that more money needs to be taken from other sources rather than direct funding from government. They're being propped up, so to speak, and there really is no reason for them to be propped up. There are, very logical alternatives out there, and we would like to see those alternatives being put on the table. As we mentioned on Friday as well, Tom, the last official messaging from government in terms of e-tolls also came in 2019 when Sanral announced that it wasn't going to be pursuing historical debt. Since then, we've heard very little or nothing really from government officially on the future of e-tolls. Yes, we've heard some remarks from Jacob Mamabolo. We've heard some remarks from the Minister of Finance and the DG in Parliament about the need for roads to be maintained. But nothing concrete has come from Cabinet or the Department of Transport to say this is the way forward and this is our decision. We would certainly like that to happen sooner rather than later because it gives us an opportunity to respond to that.
What would happen to the firms that have been paying, Layton? I mean, nominal they might be, but what would happen because they have been consistently paying?
Yeah, I mean, in our view, those people need to be reimbursed, no question. We think it was a doomed system from the start. We said as much when the system started. Not only the AA, but many other organizations and individuals had their concerns around the e-tolling on the Gauteng Freeway Improvement Project and the way it was going to be funded, the mechanism. And I think that, those people who have been paying deserve that money back. Again, I'll bring you right around. It's the same situation with something like the Gautrain where there are reservations about its efficacy. Now we're in a situation because of low ridership levels. Bombela, the private concessionaire, is being funded through taxpayers' money, and we think that, for instance, is a very good place to start funding e-tolls. And the connection for us is a very clear one.
What do we make then of the fact that even after the task team was instituted by the president in 2019, and it reported that this process would need to be transparent, deliberative, and participatory, you're still telling us that you are left out of those talks. You're not actually seeing how these decisions are made.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I don't want to characterize that as being the case. I think the progression of the talks has certainly happened, at a fast rate. And I think we've also got to take into consideration COVID did have an impact on that. We were involved in discussions with the Minister of Transport. He did give us his ear. We did explain our findings and we explained our reservations. So, it wasn't like the AA was completely excluded from those discussions. We certainly were part of that initial process. And I think that going forward, it's now a decision that the government has to make. And what we are asking for is just for that decision to be made and for that decision to be communicated. The minister at one point did give an indication of some of the options that were on the table to him. We did respond to that and said that, again, we think that there is only one option, and that's to ring fence the fuel levy, to reimburse people who have been paying. So there were a number of things that were on the table. This was about a year ago. But, obviously, the government now has got a decision, and we want to know what that decision is.
Layton Beard, appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us, spokesperson for the Automobile Association there.